You are head of design and production at Ozwald Boateng. How did you land such a coveted role?
I graduated from one of the best fashion schools in Canada and worked at one of the best tailoring companies in Canada. Essentially realized if I'm going to do tailoring properly, I need to go to the best place in the world, and that's Savile Row. I moved without a job. I moved without a flat, friends, anything. I just knew what I wanted to come here for. I think London is very composed on the outside, but a little cheeky on the inside.
Do you have any advice for someone looking to start a fashion brand?
I think you have to really want it, because it doesn't matter the school you go to, your experience, it is going to be a very, very hard journey. My whole life, people said, oh, fashion, that's a really hard industry. It's very competitive. Are you sure you want to do that? And to this day, people are like, it's a tough industry. I'm like, yeah, but I'm in it and I love it and I wouldn't do anything else.
Hello, Angelica. Welcome to Cross Border.
Hi, Kay. Thank you for having me today.
First things first, where are you from?
I am from Toronto, Canada. Have you ever been?
I've not, but it's high on my list.
Yes.
It's just, I hear the summers are beautiful, but growing up in the Midwest myself, I don't love winter, and I know Canada has harsh winters.
I always recommend going in the summer. Yeah.
But it is high on my list. And
Good.
So what are you doing here in London?
So currently I work at Ozwald Boateng. I'm the head of design and productions there. And I have also recently launched my own brand, Colucci, which is a luxury fashion brand. And just living the London life.
Okay. And you've been here how long?
9 years. Yeah.
Can you call yourself a Londoner now?
I was wondering this. I don't know. Some people say it's the 10-year mark, but we'll see. I still got the Canadian accent. So.
In New York they say 10, so I think
Okay.
that's what we'll go. So you're almost there. So we'll check in again next year.
Okay.
What inspired to leave home and move abroad to London?
I wanted to move to London specifically to work on Savile Row. So I had a very clear focus. I had studied fashion design, graduated with focus on menswear, and fell into tailoring and fell in love with tailoring, and essentially realized if I'm going to do tailoring properly, I need to go to the best place in the world, and that's Savile Row. And very long story short, got what I came for, and I've been working on the row for about 8 years now.
So first, before we dive into Savile, because there's a lot there with Savile Row and the legacy, but did you have any sort of culture shock upon arriving in London?
Yes, a lot. I think first, I quickly realized that my experience in Canada didn't really mean much in London. So I moved without a job. I moved without a flat, friends, anything. I just knew what I wanted to come here for. So aside from like a career perspective, feeling very starting from day one, even though I had graduated from one of the best fashion schools in Canada and worked at one of the best tailoring companies in Canada, it was day one. No friends, no connections. From a culture point of view, funny enough, sometimes it's even just a language thing. We speak English, but there can be certain words that you're like, oh, that's not what I thought it meant, or trying to understand each other from that point of view. And then in London, it being very particular about where you lived. I remember having this anxiety of like, do you live north, south, east, west? Like each neighborhood has its own sort of meaning to people, and what sort of culture do you want to be known to be part of when you move somewhere? So very London-specific things like that. Aside from the day-to-day logistical, you can't open a bank account without an address. You can't get an address without a bank account. Like those very simple things that nowadays have become easier, I think, with digital banks. But I remember going to every bank on the high street being like, I have my life savings. Can you deposit it? So I think it was a struggle, but I say London is very challenging, but very rewarding as a city to move to.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Definitely echo that. Very challenging and very rewarding if you can stick it through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So can you talk a bit about the legacy of Ozwald Boateng and Savile Row?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ozwald Boateng is a very incredible and special brand. As a person, Ozwald is a very strong figure in London. He's of British-Ghanian heritage and has been working as a designer specializing in men's tailoring for over 40 years now. He was the youngest and the first Black tailor to open on Savile Row. So he was really the leader in a lot of areas. He was also the first Black creative director at Givenchy in early 2000s, which is a lot of people forget about. So he's the OG when it comes to the world of tailoring and menswear, and specifically, and bringing menswear in London to the foreground and doing fashion shows and things that tailors traditionally on Savile Row weren't doing. So he's sort of a hybrid between a tailor and a Bond Street luxury brand. The day-to-day is a made-to-measure business, but also its connections with Hollywood throughout time has always made him very part of the wardrobe scene. He's done costumes for several major films. Even most recently, we were doing the Black Panther films, for example, and The Burial with Jamie Foxx, and a number of different Hollywood films. He also, as the brand, has done the uniforms for British Airways most recently. So it's more than just a tailoring house. It really is this incredible sort of lifestyle brand, and it's growing into more of that with home goods and expansion into casual wear products as well. So it's it's a very interesting brand. Savile Row is an incredible place, and as I mentioned, I moved here for it. So Savile Row technically is a street in Mayfair. There's probably 20 to 40 shops on it, but it is the street for bespoke tailoring. So it is over 300 years old. It is the epicenter for getting a suit made, and it has done everything from military to politicians to films like James Bond suits, the Kingsman, all these very famous, iconic British tailoring moments have all come from Savile Row. So it is an institution and a heritage and known for craftsmanship and the highest level of product of suit that you can get in the world.
So what attracted you to the art of tailoring?
Tailoring was an unexpected part of my journey, to be honest. I started studying fashion design with a love of women's wear. I was all about haute couture gowns and dresses. And halfway through my degree, we had to do a menswear collection. And I was grumpy about it and didn't want to do it. But by having to do it, I realized I love menswear and specifically tailoring, because it puts you into a smaller creative box. In women's wear, you can do flowers, sparkles, pink, sequins, whatever, anything goes. But within menswear, and then specifically tailoring, how do you evolve a suit? How do you evolve a very tightly constrained product? And though it's through small nuances. It's through the fabrication and the buttons and the detailing and the fit and very small things to evolve men and menswear in a very traditional type of product. And that constraint was very creatively freeing for me, which might sound counterintuitive, but I love focusing on suits, and there's so much to the craft of tailoring. Every day I'm still learning the very nuanced specifications of all the internal work that goes into a suit. Most people would not realize. It's like building a car or something. Like, all the components on the inside of a suit is what makes it so special, and how they are applied and the quality of the materials that are going into it. So it's very technical, and it's almost like a nerdy field because you can really get into it. But I love that.
I never realized. I love a suit. I think it's something from. I worked in finance and banking for almost 10 years, so I do appreciate a well-fitted suit.
Yes,
and the different types of suit, from a work suit to a dinner suit and a tuxedo. So I definitely can share that appreciation. So you are head of design and production at Ozwald Boateng. How did you land such a coveted role?
Right. So, as I mentioned, I moved to London with
no connection,
nothing. A dream. I was like, let's make this happen. So Savile Row was the focus. I had a list of all the brands written down on a piece of paper, and Ozwald was on my mind. It wasn't that it was necessarily the be all and end all brand at the time, but a few things that kind of kept sort of pointing me in that direction. Two different people, when I said, I'm moving to London, they're like, oh, wow, imagine you worked for Ozwald Boateng. I'm like, that's so interesting. Like, it's a niche brand. Usually from North America, like, oh, imagine you worked at Burberry. Like, a very obvious one. So two different people mentioned this. I was like, oh, interesting. And I really loved color. So my sort of design language has always been really centered around color. And that's something Ozwald is very much known for. So, I applied to everyone. I was calling, I was emailing. And then when I didn't get a response, and Savile Row, there's no HR departments, there's no structure to these things. And they're institutions, so often there's not a position until someone leaves. It's not like they're growing teams in that sort of way. So,
and I can also imagine that with such a prestigious, craft and line of work, it's really about who you know.
Yeah.
And you coming from Toronto, not knowing anyone,
yeah,
I can imagine that was extremely frustrating.
Absolutely. And I would, go the recruiter route, talk to recruiters, and they would all say, oh, but what's your UK experience? I'm like, nothing. I just got off a plane. Like, I just got here. So I just had to go my own way. So no calls and emails. Eventually did handwritten letters. So I wrote a letter and I printed a postcard size of my portfolio and my CV on the back. And I just wrote to the creative directors saying, this is who I am. I want to work for you, da-da-da. Little letter. That ended up on Ozwald's desk. So, and I think what he mentioned that kind of caught his eye was that I had done the suits for the show Suits at my old company in Toronto. And his connection with film in Hollywood, like he was very much aware. And so I think that kind of caught him. And, anyways, they invited me in for an interview. This was several months after I'd already been in London, and I met with Ozwald in that first meeting, which I was kind of surprised about. And I was nervous as hell, and I was like, listen, I'm not from the best school in London. Like, I know I have to, like, put my time in to get to Savile Row. And I was so nervous. I was like, but fuck it, I want to be here. And I don't swear. So I was like, oh my God. And his assistant laughed. So I was like, okay. It's like, it was kind of... I think he enjoyed it. I think he was like, okay, cool. Like she wants this badly. Yeah. So they were like, all right, cool. Listen, we'll get you in for some trial days. Went in for 2 trial days and then didn't hear from them for months. But I was like, come on. I would always be following up. But they weren't saying no. So I was like, you know what? I think they're trying to figure it out. Like, if you don't get a job, they tell you it's a no.
Yeah.
But they were kind of,
let
me get back to you. Yeah, no news is good news. Yeah. So anyways, months go by and I was like, listen, like it's been several months, like what's happening? She's like, oh, we'll call you back next week. If not, calls me the next day. They're like, Ozwald wants to meet with you. I go in for like a 30-second meeting. And he's like, listen, like you made a great impression. The timing's great. We want you to start next week. And I remember leaving being like, what's the job? Is it a paid job? Is it like, there was no context. And yeah, so I started the following week. I think technically the position was production coordinator or something like this, but I had sort of 2 weeks of training of a gentleman that was there previously and then left on my own. It was a time of growth, so I was a new hire. So through that, I was then managing all of the production for the business and then started to help grow the team and bring on new people for different projects. And it just has been a constant growth since I started. So it was a really interesting time. I was completely thrown in the deep end. But it's a pleasure to be able to do so much and to be able to work with a brand that is so recognized and so prestigious, but also be super hands-on and like be in it every day. So,
wow.
Yeah.
It sounds like a huge role, to take on, especially just having moved here. And then I know imposter syndrome has kind of become almost a dirty word now, but did you ever suffer from imposter syndrome?
It's an interesting question. I think generally speaking, no, because I worked very hard. I believe that what I've done. But the concept of sometimes feeling insecure or feeling like a wow or a pinch me moment, like for sure, like those happened. But I don't think I completely would label myself as someone with imposter syndrome. I think, I've studied, I've worked, I've done everything. I'm like, yes, I've done this.
You've paid your dues and you came over here. So there's no time for it's showtime.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Talk us through your recent collaboration with FE Gallery.
So, yeah, FE Gallery is a contemporary art gallery based in Dubai. And they actually met Ozwald last year, and they reached out to say, listen, we want to do a London sort of showcase. And the shop itself has always sort of been designed in a way that we can bring art in and out. So we love that connection of art and fashion. We just hadn't done something like that in a while. So when the team, it's actually a family-run gallery, incredible family-run team, reached out to us. It was very easy transition. So it was like, yes, this is great. They represent incredible artists, based in Africa and the diaspora, living and past. They have an incredible collection. So they curated a space of 3 artists, which is now in the shop until early December.
It sounds like an exciting collaboration, and I was very lucky to be at the launch event, the launch party.
Yeah.
So what made you want to start your own fashion line, and what made London the right place to do it?
So I always knew I was going to have my own brand, but I knew I was going to work my way up through another company before doing that. I think when you graduate, you really feel like the top of the world, and a lot of people assume you're going to start your own brand. But something in me knew I'm not done learning. I'm not done, working through a company is so invaluable. You learn a lot on the job. So that's always been part of it. But I guess a few things happened. I reached my 10 years in the industry professionally, which felt amazing because I can still remember being that student being like, I have no experience. Who's going to hire me? So I was like, all right, a decade's pretty good. I know what's going on. Like, I get this industry and I still love it. And I think naturally I started to be sewing more. I was creating more. And I think when you work for a brand, even though I completely align with the brand's aesthetic, it's still not my creative vision. I'm still working for a creative director. So I was really itching to want to have my creative expression. What is Angelica Colucci as a designer mean? And what is that brand? So it was just, the timing started to feel right. So it's something I launched about a year ago, and London is absolutely the best place for me to be launching the brand. One, from a supply chain point of view, all of my products are made either in London or in Italy. So proximity to some of the best craftsmanship in the world, which is a very important part of the brand, is all local at my doorstep. And also, if London is a very prestigious place. If you make it in London, you're going to make it anywhere. So it's a very natural, positioning and progression, and being a luxury brand that is focused on craftsmanship. It is something that is respected here. People love quality products. There is money here. There is, the space to be able to grow.
I would agree with that. London is, it's an exciting city. It's a vibrant city. It's a global city.
Absolutely.
So I will say, Jay-Z and Alicia Keys said that if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Concrete jungle. But I would argue that London gives New York a run for its money, obviously. With the scale, the intensity of the city, it's tough, it's gritty. But if you're resilient, you can definitely see the type of success that you've seen so far.
Yes, resilience is the key word.
Yeah, exactly. London has a very distinct sense of fashion. How would you describe it, and how would you compare it to a place like Paris or Milan?
Yeah, this is a great question, and something I really kind of love focusing on when I travel. I will say in the past sort of 15 years, that distinctiveness has kind of blurred. I think, unfortunately, people are starting to look kind of similar quite globally. But I think at least in the world of tailoring, which is what I sort of pay attention to, British tailoring is quite strong, and, in terms of strong construction, there's a strong shoulder pad, the sleeves, like the fit is quite structured, traditionally with more classic outer fabrics, but there's something cheeky on the inside. They like their colorful linings, a little print, a little something. So I think London is very composed on the outside, but a little cheeky on the inside, whereas if you go to Italy, you're going to see gentlemen in pink jackets or red jackets, or very soft tailoring, very soft construction on the shoulders. Unlined pieces, naturally also weather dependent. Like in Italy, it's hot, so you're wearing linens and softer things. So I definitely like to pay attention to that. And I think traditionally or typically you do have those differences, especially in the world of tailoring.
You made a really interesting point, which I actually, you said composed on the outside and cheeky on the inside.
Yes.
I think that actually speaks really well to London culture in itself. Did you find that when you first moved here? I know, they say Americans are super outgoing and Canadians are quite similar. Did you find that that kind of outward composure of British culture at all challenging?
Absolutely, and especially when it comes to making new friends, to be honest. So
100%.
yeah, I think. And so in North America, you can go sit at a bar by yourself, sit up at the bar, have a drink. You'll probably chat to someone next to you, right? You can make friends.
Absolutely. You can expect to chat with the person next to you.
Yeah. Here, they remove the bar stools. So you actually can't even sit there. It's a very transactional space. You get your drink, you go outside, you chat with your friends in a small sort of group. One, that's intimidating to approach a group of people. But also generally, to go back to that point, they're not so open until they have a few drinks in them. And then they'll start chatting to you and open up. So it's hard. I think it was really hard to make friends, to be honest, just because of that sort of composure, and they kind of like keep to themselves. And I think from like a respectful point of view, they're not trying to shun you, but it's just like a cultural thing. Whereas in North America, it's like open arms, come sit with us. Like it's super easygoing. So I would say I started to just make friends with expats. Like it just started to happen that way. And then eventually, meet other people. But, and also they, have grown up here. They have their school friends. They got their establishment of community. Whereas I had nobody. I was here to just make this dream come true. So yeah, it was a struggle.
Yeah. And were there anything specifically you did to build a community in London?
I mean, you do. It's sort of that expat community. One friend will connect you to another friend, and like you do need to be outgoing. You need to put yourself out there. I did join Soho House to try to meet people, so I would go out to the members events and just going to different talks and stuff like this. So I think, by sort of participating in events or even like meetup groups and stuff like this to find like-minded people is helpful. And then luckily, I think it's just more of the snowball effect. Once you meet someone that you connect with, they'll connect you to someone else. But it takes a long time.
It takes a while. I would agree with that. It does take a lot of, upfront investment, a lot of work, a lot of stepping outside of your comfort zone.
100%.
However, it is true what they say about London, that once you do start to make those inroads, that snowball effect is there, and you just one person will catch you. So hang in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Is my advice. So now moving back to London fashion, there's a distinct sense of style between East London and West London.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, totally. So West London is perhaps a bit more traditional, maybe a bit more put together. You might be seeing more obvious brand names or very conservative fashion, whereas in East, it's maybe a bit more expressive. There might be more playing with proportion and shape and like layering of pieces, maybe fusing high and low. You'll still see designer brands, but maybe it's mixed with like a vintage piece or like something thrifted. Like in East, there's Brick Lane where like people are there. It's thriving vintage market, for example. So that's a generalized speaking. I think obviously things merge, and I think what's really cool about London is that it has this like super traditional upper class poshness, but this super cool gritty underbelly as well.
Absolutely.
And I think I love when they merge. I love when you just see the super eccentric people that are wearing incredible things next to someone in a morning coat and a top hat. And I love that about London. People are super expressive, whether it's in their traditional dress and then also in their just like creative dress. And you can see all of it happening on the streets. And I love that creativity.
True. I also find to that point that the people who tend to merge those two, the traditional and the more, grungy, sometimes generally tend to be, the most interesting people with the craziest stories, especially if they're, 50, 60 or, above, they have stories about what London was and what it's like today. So
absolutely.
I think, London just has such a unique sense of style that I've come to appreciate over the years. I'm in East London, so I do like that grunge, it's very fascinating. And at first, I wasn't able to put my finger on London's fashion sense, but I think now after living here 3 years, I can see a spot that, okay, that's a Londoner. I'm still trying to identify it. I think you put it very well, but I'll work on.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. Who are some of your favorite fashion designers right now?
My go-to answer is going to be Daniel Roseberry at Schiaparelli. So an incredible women's focus couture house. His use of structure and shape just like makes you feel something. And I think that's something in this world when something gives you a physical reaction where you're like, wow, that is incredible. So he is my contemporary favorite. Generally speaking, I'm the old masters. I like my 1930s, 1940s, 50s, 60s designers. So,
and who are they? Who are the masters?
Well, back in the day, like Christian Dior for sure, Balenciaga, even Coco Chanel. Schiaparelli, of course, was from the 1920s, but I love the use of drape and shape that garments used to have and the care that used to be put into the construction of pieces.
And how has your role today influenced your own fashion brand?
Yeah, so I think the continuous thread, which might have even been from before, but also has been strengthened through my position, is definitely my love of craftsmanship, definitely my love of color. So those are two things that are very strong to the Colucci identity. And being able to work on Savile Row in such a prestigious place where it has to be perfect. There's no exception. Like, you have to deliver the utmost best quality products. And I think that's something that in this day and age, the word craftsmanship has almost become like the word sustainability. It's like, are you really doing it properly? Is it really made that way?
A buzzword.
Exactly. It's become a buzzword. And so to me, it's like I wouldn't do anything less. I wouldn't do anything less than exemplary. And I think that sort of being really in that every single day and just embodying that is something that will always be part of my design language.
And can you talk about some of the pieces that you produce in your brand?
So Colucci is a luxury lifestyle brand. The focus at the moment is on silk accessories. So being a new brand, that's a really great sort of touch point. There's no sizing issues. I can sell them online. It's a great way to get people introduced to the sense of craftsmanship and color. I do also offer made-to-order clothing for men and women. That is sort of a slow feed drip. I drop a new product every 2 months or so. But it's sort of in the very much of a growth stage. I will eventually sort of do presentations and more sort of collection previews, if you will.
And what is your design process like?
Yeah, so from an inspiration point of view, I kind of always am collecting. If I'm either seeing things, I photograph like crazy. I always document. I have very large Pinterest boards where I'm constantly saving things. And then old films. So I take a lot of inspiration from old films and the old designers that I mentioned. So I constantly am kind of saving imagery. And then when it comes to designing, depends what the product is. And so one way is if I have cloth, I actually just like to drape. And so I'll create the shapes often on myself, draping on myself and sort of constructing them from there. I sometimes also sketch by hand. So I do like to sketch, but then also I am quite technically trained. So I hop on Illustrator and do technical line drawings. So to get the image out, it could be one of those three ways, but then it would go into creating the actual patterns, creating it into like proper way to make them for production, and then working with the person that will be making the products ultimately. So I design and sort of product develop and produce, but then I work with very established makers and specialists in their fields to make the products come to life.
And what's the most challenging or frustrating part of the process? If there is one. Because you can love the entire process. I mean, you have to love the process to love what you do to do.
No, I definitely love the process. I think fit is really important to me, and I'm somewhat I'm no one's standardized sizing. The concept of standardized sizing is crazy, and we're often wearing clothes that are uncomfortable, and I think we've become so used to it that you don't realize it. But something that I really want to obsess with in Colucci is being able to make very stylish clothing, but also make them comfortable. It's kind of been this thing. It's like you suffer for fashion. You just go through it in pain. But I'm like, it doesn't need to be this way. So, but perfecting the fit is difficult. Like, we're human bodies. We're soft, malleable things. It's not like steel and wood where you can be very accurate. So I think my perfectionism struggle will be in making something fit really perfectly. And that's something that I spend a lot of time on. And that's kind of why the clothing part of my business is a lot slower of a drip, because I want to make it so perfect and really as comfortable as it can be, but still sophisticated and beautiful. You don't need to wear a sack to be comfortable. So,
well, from what I've seen, it is very beautiful, and looking forward to more things from the collection, from the brand.
Thank you.
How has living abroad influenced your outlook on fashion and life in general?
It is so invaluable. I think living abroad, it gives you such a great competitive edge because you understand two or multiple, depending on the person, views of different countries. So having a North American perspective with a European view and experience just gives you an edge that no one else has. So there's that, and just I think from the education point of view, you just are taught differently. So the training I had was so incredible, and I'm so grateful for it. And it's very different to training in the UK, for example. So I think you find your strengths within it. They all sort of blur and like sort of merge in and support each other ultimately. But I think it definitely, it's very enriching. I think it gives you a very dynamic sort of view on life and also your creative process and a very multicultural lens.
Well, I would agree with that. I don't know about you when I first moved here, to the point about, it taking time to build a community. I find I had a lot of alone time to work, to develop myself, to learn more about myself, learn more about what I actually wanted to be doing and who I wanted to be surrounding myself with. So it was a bit of a both professional but also personal development period, both in the newness but also in the isolation. Did you find that as well?
No, and it's a good point because you can kind of be whoever you want in a way. I think, because I grew up in Toronto and it's a big city, but it started to feel like a town. You leave your door, you're going to see someone you know. Yeah. I loved coming to London and being anonymous. Like, it's like you can kind of start afresh and like it's a growth stage. Like, you can be someone else if you want to. And also but also just be your very true self. I feel very relaxed and like happy as this is who I am. I think at first people started to pick up a British accent. They always say like expats, like you're trying to assimilate to the British culture. But I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to have this accent. This is who I am. I'm going to be outgoing. Take it or leave it.
So do you ever think you'll move back to Canada?
Not really. I think I will always have a place in Toronto for sure. I want to, I think I'm a bit of a cultural nomad in a way. Like, I see myself having a few hubs, definitely London, Canada, like in Toronto, and then someplace in Italy, probably in Europe. Like, my future vision is to have a bit more of a global scope and be able to bounce around a lot more easily. So not full time in Toronto, but it's always home.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a great life, and actually a common thread and a common theme for a lot of the guests we've had on the show. Cross border.
Interesting.
You kind of feel that your place might not necessarily be in one specific place, but you identify and resonate with many places around the world. So, yeah. Do you have any advice for someone considering a move abroad?
Absolutely do it. I think try not to overthink it. It's like an incredible experience, and you kind of need to do it before you chicken yourself out. So it's like when you do it when you're younger, do it when you have the energy, you can always go home. And I think it's so invaluable. You will not regret it. So I absolutely recommend it to anyone who has the itch to do it. Just go and do it.
I would agree with that. And what about someone looking to start a fashion brand? It's very competitive. It's we've heard about the fashion industry. We've seen the Devil Wears Prada. What advice do you have for someone looking to enter?
I think you have to really want it, because it doesn't matter the school you go to, your experience, it is going to be a very, very hard journey. But if you really want to do it, you can do it. And my whole life, people said, oh, fashion, that's a really hard industry. It's very competitive. Are you sure you want to do that? And to this day, people are like, it's a tough industry. I'm like, yeah, but I'm in it and I love it and I wouldn't do anything else. Like, it is doable, but you have to want it, because I know many friends who I studied with, and I could probably count 5 on one hand, that are still in the industry. Most people are going to drop out. It is definitely not for the faint-hearted, and even, it's a tough industry also from like a morals point of view, like an environmental point of view. It's a very damaging industry to the environment. And there's a lot of times where you're like, why are we in this? This is crazy. But if you love it, and I love it, I wouldn't do anything else, you will make it happen. So I think prepare yourself for that. I do believe education is quite important, going to a good school, getting the good foundation, but it's not the be-all and end-all, depending on what you want to do in it. But find mentors, find people that maybe have gone through the path that you want to get to and see how they got there and talk to them. And people are very nice and will have a coffee with you. If you, send them an email on LinkedIn or message people, I think soak up as much info as you can so then you can suss out, all right, what part of the industry do I want to be in? Do I really want to be doing it this way, or what do I need to get there? So if you want to do it, go for it.
Definitely go for it.
Yeah.
Just got to love the process.
You absolutely have to be resilient and just know what you're there for. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Angela, we are very excited for you for both, what's to come at Ozwald Boateng, but also your own brand, Angelica Colucci. Mm-hmm. So we will keep an eye out on social media. We can find Ozwald Boateng on Savile Row and on social media. And we can also find your brand on social media. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Kane. This is a pleasure.
Yes. And keep an eye out for both brands. And thank you again for watching an episode of Cross Border. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.